welcome back to the channel. I am glad to have you. So this is the start of a new series. One of my Patreons, Soph, suggested that I do this and it's a really good idea. So basically on my TikTok, I share breaking news that's super exciting. But there is a whole bunch of other archaeological and historical news that doesn't make it to the top. And so suggestion was that I film YouTube videos where I go over the maybe less exciting but still pretty awesome finds. And archaeology just moves at such a rapid pace all around the world that I can pretty much do a summary of the months each and every month. So this first video will be a little bit of a mishmash of the just sort of last 2 to 3 months and the finds that we have found that are not already on my TikTok. If that sounds cool to you, then stick around. Would love it if you could like, subscribe, follow, bell, blah, blah, blah. And with that, play the music. And a disclaimer, this will be a tipsy history video. Drunk history. It's a Friday night. What can I say, you know? All right, so this month we have had some pretty wild finds. Cleopatra is potentially going to be found at this point, 2022 November. Kathleen Martinez has found some really promising evidence. That is over on my TikTok, so I'm not going to repeat everything over here. I also have a YouTube video that you can go and watch, which goes into more depth on Cleo. So I don't want to repeat myself again. I just repeated myself by... Anyway. We also have found amazing amounts of mummies from the New Kingdom, by Zahi Hawass in Egypt again. Also a unknown up until this point queen. So that's also over on my TikTok. I'm not gonna, I guess, repeat that information. There's been a lot, so I'm gonna try to cover the bits and pieces that have not been just as exciting but are amazing nonetheless. Okie dokie, so let's start with a 4-day-old, at the point of filming this video, article about protective childbirth tattoos that have been found on Egyptian mummies. So some Egyptian mothers and Egyptian women in general in ancient Egypt got tattoos, but there are findings that some Egyptian mothers got tattoos to protect them in childbirth and during the postpartum period. Now this has all been found obviously on mummies, and it's really freaking awesome. So these tattoos were popular in the New Kingdom, so that would be 1550 BCE all the way through to 1070 BCE, so around 500 years. And researchers have taken mummies from this period and they have found that a lower back tattoo, which seems like a 21st century sort of fad, like that's popular, you know, the tramp stamp situation. But yeah, ancient Egyptians practiced this more than 3,000 years ago. Now this particular study actually comes from a bunch of mummies that were excavated around the time that King Tut was excavated, which was to the year 100 years ago, 1922. These mummies with new technology are constantly being re-examined, re-looked at, and that is where obviously the skin of a mummy is extremely delicate depending on the state of it when it is found, and with new technology they have been able to find the tattoos on the very delicate skin of these bodies. I'm going to put a picture here on screen that sort of is a modern depiction of the tattoo, which is on the lower back of the woman. This is obviously a reconstruction of the tattoo mummified onto, tattooed onto these mummified women. Pretty incredible that these women had a I guess culture around childbirth and around protection and around the postnatal experience, which if any of you guys have had kids, you know is a wild ride. The researchers concluded in their paper, when placed in context with New Kingdom artifacts and texts, these tattoos and representations of tattoos would have visually connected with imagery referencing the women as sexual partners, pregnant midwives, and mothers participating in the postpartum rituals used for protection of the mother of the child. So I've linked an article below where you can read on Live Science, and Live Science references that paper. If you're interested, you can go and have a look into that. Now, the second study published on November the 2nd, 2022 is Prehistoric DNA reveals that there are two groups that migrated to the UK after the last ice age. So there are bones of two individuals that have been found in caves that have helped scientists determine these two groups and their ancestry. Cannibalized face, which has been found, and I will put a picture of said cannibalized face here, which dates to the 15th century BCE. So that is 15, yeah, that's a long time ago. And they were found in a Gow's cave, and the same site still remains analysed in new studies. So there's a lot that has been found in this cave. So these bones, which I'm gonna place some more interesting finds. You can see some of the skull, you can see some of the teeth, you can see some of the actual jawbone. And when they published these finds in the Journal of Nature, Ecology and Evolution, there was a quote by Luke Amicaturas, I believe it's how you say it. It is clearly not the same group of modern humans everywhere. Pretty freaking wild, to be honest. Another archaeologist says, I think we've underestimated the diversity in this particular period of time when it comes to Homo species, human species. So during the last ice age, glaciers were at their largest. Now this is like roughly 30,000 years ago all the way through to 20,000 years ago. Ice sheets started retreating, humans began moving back sort of to modern day England around sort of 15,000 years ago. And the prehistoric humans known as Magdalenians spread from the north to the west. And yeah. Now, not only did it show like difference in the DNA, but the DNA also showed a lot of other things. So chemicals in the bones showed that the individuals largely had a diet of large mammals like horse or reindeer, and they carved human bones, cups made from skulls, and it is all of this evidence is consistent with the idea that they were a cannibalistic subspecies. And as the climate shifted, so did the people. DNA analysis of other finds and other remains found in this cave in Wales dates to just like 1,500 years later. And it suggests different ancestry entirely. So this group this separate group, which just, you know, 1,000 odd years later came in, were related to a different group of Western hunter-gatherers from Europe in the Near East, and there are no signs of cannibalism from this particular group. So super interesting, super fascinating to know that there were really distinct two human groups in this one area. Again, prehistorians have known about the highly mobile, small populations of Ice Age hunter-gatherers, and this particular find adds to that research, to the growing picture of the ecology, fragile human groups that spread thinly across late Europe. That was a mouthful. All right, heading back to Egypt. Now this was only published 6 years ago. 6 days ago. Sorry for laughing, this is actually kind of morbid. Ancient Egyptians may have used branding irons on their slaves. Yeah. So these branding irons, which I will show a picture of here, suggest that they were used to mark the skin of human slaves. So, several ancient texts and illustrations, as well as 10 of these branding irons, dating back to 3,000 years ago, so, you know, 1000-ish BCE, suggest that ancient Egyptians branded slaves. This branding was made of bronze, and they're now collections in the British Museum, unfortunately. Now, the branding irons are dated to roughly the 19th dynasty of Egypt, and you can find this study in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, which I will link in this video. Now, up until this point, Egyptians thought and assumed that the branding was used for cattle. Cows were extremely important in the Egyptian culture and belief system, or even perhaps horses. However, the brands have now been sort of analyzed and deemed to be too small for those large mammals. So archaeologists are not excluding the possibility that, you know, goats or smaller animals could have been branded, but there are a lot of other pieces of evidence that basically point to humans being branded. So, what is the evidence? Well, the human branding irons are very similar in size and shape from like 19th century branding irons on human beings, which is one little piece of evidence. The other is ancient Egyptian writings that talk about marking slaves. So this was originally assumed to be the practice of tattooing. However, obviously this paper and Karev's findings think maybe it was not so much tattooing but branding. Now, what's further more interesting is the evidence that tattooing in ancient Egypt, which kind of ties in from our first study, was pretty much exclusively performed on women for religious purposes or protective purposes, not for slave purposes, right? And if you're doing it on a large scale, it's not easily replicable, right? Every tattoo is going to be slightly different depending on who did the tattooing. So therefore, these branding tattoos, whatever, you know, it makes more sense that it would have been a branding iron. the ancient Egyptians did not have classifications like slavery, serfdom, indentured servitude, debt, bondage. So historians have to work out, okay, what was the terms of a slave, etc., etc. This is a very sort of complicated study, and I would suggest in the third link below having a look at this study because it's a bit complex and it raises more questions than it answers, in my opinion. However, I think it's important just to point out that a lot of people believe that the pyramids were built by slaves, which is not the case. They were actually paid workers. I think that's potentially the biggest myth. But did Egyptians have slaves? Yes. So yeah, take a look at that paper. It's pretty interesting. Okay, and in the last little segment of this episode, which is hardly scraping the surface of what's been found just in these last couple months, many more of these episodes will need to come. But a T-Rex skull, a real life dinosaur skull named Maximus, is being bidded on for $20 million. So there is a massive fossilized Tyrannosaurus Rex skull that is hitting the auction block next month, which sort of feels really sad because I feel like it should be public property. But anyway, let's continue on. They're going to be selling it in a live sale in New York, and it is a 76 million year old skull. Yeah, just try to imagine that. Even just a million years, it's just like, anyway, it's the most complete paleontologists have ever unearthed, and this skull rivals those displayed at museums. Yeah, it's expected to sell for $20 million. And it was found on private land in Hell Creek, which is in South Dakota in North America. So I guess that's why it's hitting the private antiquity market. I want to say so much about the private antiquity market, which is, I don't know. Anyway, here's a picture of the said skull. It's magnificent, and I'm just glad that we at least have pictures and whatever of it, and that it doesn't just disappear into the private antiquities market. The practice of auctioning off dinosaur fossils to private bidders is obviously controversial among paleontologists and other experts, and just like, you know, humans as a whole. Some argue that auctions allow private collectors to get their hands on hideaway specimens that belong in public museums, and honestly, that's my personal point of view. Anyway. And other people worry that these high price tags will encourage illegal digging on land that does not belong to them or is of potentially indigenous ownership, etc. So, of course, museums are free to submit bids as well. Fingers crossed that maybe some rich history museums, such as like the Abu Dhabi Museum in the Middle East, might make a bid. But yeah, it does raise a pretty interesting conversation about private collectors and their crucial role in the distribution of objects to museum collectors. So oftentimes, oftentimes is not probably the correct word. sometimes, potentially rarely, private collectors will actually donate their ownership over an item to a museum so that it can be publicly viewed, but they actually keep that ownership. But there is a plethora of private collectors that do not work this way and will not allow archaeologists, historians, scholars to view these artifacts. So that was just four of the like swamping that we've had in November 2022 in the archaeology, the paleontology, just like pretty much anything history related. There is so many more. If you like this style of video, please comment below, because I will only really keep doing that if you guys enjoy it. And yeah, just let me know if you want more, because I got a ton where that came from. Thank you again for watching my videos. Please like and subscribe. Otherwise, it's very hard to motivate myself to make videos. And I will see you in the next one. Mwah! Lots of love, guys. Bye!